Hello, my name is Andrea Figueroa. Welcome to Eagle Talk. Today we will talk about a criminal activity that has many silent victims, impacts communities and families, and has an estimated $2,800 a week in income. Today's topic is human trafficking. Human trafficking is now considered to be one of the top sources of income of organized crime. North Carolina, right here in our state, is among the top 10 states with the highest number of reported human trafficking cases, according to the National Human Trafficking Resource Center. North Carolina is also one of 21 states that have enacted specific laws against human trafficking. Today's guest will speak specifically to defining human trafficking, implications, social work competencies, and relating to human trafficking, and child welfare and the risks that the involvement of children risks. So today I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and dear friend, Ms. Ford, who will speak about defining human trafficking and the implications involved in it.
Good morning, and thank you, Andrea. Human trafficking is believed to be the third largest criminal activity in the world. It is a form of human slavery. Under the umbrella of human trafficking, we have sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and domestic servitude. Article 3, Paragraph A of the Protocol to Prevent, Suppress, and Punish Trafficking in Persons defines trafficking in persons as the recruiting, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of the threat of use of power or of position of vulnerability or of the giving or receiving of payments or benefit to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation. North Carolina is among the top 10 states with the highest number of reported human trafficking cases, according to the National Human Trafficking Resource Center. Experts say the number of major interstates that cross through the state, I-40, 85, and 95, the large agricultural population, and the state's strategic location along the East Coast contributes to this issue. 140 human trafficking cases have been reported in North Carolina in 2016. But there are numerous cases that are never reported. Since 2007, there have been 2,538 calls total, with 542 cases being reported. Next, we will have Mr. Terry David, who will discuss the child welfare aspect of human trafficking.
Thank you, Deidre. The focus of my presentation will be on the intersection between child welfare and human trafficking in the United States. In my personal opinion, I truly believe it's time for the United States government to step up and strengthen its policies and practices on serving and identifying victims of human trafficking. So definitions I like to discuss in this part of the presentation are sex trafficking and labor trafficking. First, sex trafficking involves children under the age of 18 who are induced to engage in commercial sex and are victims of sex trafficking. Labor trafficking is a little bit different, where it involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purposes of subjection to involuntary servitude, debt bondage, or slavery, and it must be present to be defined as labor trafficking. Some of the statistics or information I think is really crucial are the number of children who are trafficked. In 2014, according to the National Trafficking Resource Center, they were called or contacted over 24,000 times for people of all ages reporting possible instances of trafficking. Over 5,000 incidents of potential trafficking were reported. And then over 3,500 of these were instances of sex trafficking, where about 800 were labor trafficking. The remainder were a combination of both sex and labor trafficking. In addition, according to the FBI in 2001, there were approximately 293 youth who were at risk for being trafficked in the United States. I talked a little bit previously about some youth and child welfare stats, but I want to talk a little bit more about children and youth in out-of-home care who have been removed from their home because of child abuse and neglect, and these children and youth are at high risk of being trafficked. Also, abuse and trauma also makes these youth and children very vulnerable. Children with a long history of foster care are also at risk of being exploited. And lastly, the Administration for Children and Families cited an alarming number showing that more than 50 to 90% of children involved in child welfare services have been victims of sex trafficking. At this part of the presentation, I'll turn it over to my colleague Vanessa.
Thank you, Terry. Not much is known about the magnitude of human trafficking, the number of victims, the makeup of the victims and the perpetrators, the long-term impact of human trafficking on victims, their families, and the communities. There is little literature on effective programs and services designed specifically for victims of human trafficking. Research that is currently available is focused primarily on trafficking of international women into the United States, sexual exploitation with little attention to domestic trafficking, minor victims, and in particular, male victims of sex and labor trafficking. There are several reasons why human trafficking goes unreported. Victims fear law enforcement because they are technically committing a crime, prostitution. The victims are silenced by their traffickers. Some of the human trafficking offenses are included in other crimes such as rape, sexual assault, kidnapping, abduction, and domestic violence. Some of the trafficking victims are unaware that they are victims of crime. Others, usually children, are exploited by the assumption that the behavior is customary practice. The fear of government penalties because of the status of undocumented immigrants and the fear of deportation. Some trafficking victims use the money they obtain to take care of their family members, and negative reporting will affect family income. So, how can we fight human trafficking? The United States Department of State identified 15 ways to help fight trafficking. All 15 ways involve educating self and others about the social problem of being willing to take action. Ways to fight trafficking include learn the indicators of human trafficking, report suspicion to law enforcement, be a conscientious and informed consumer, volunteer in your community to raise awareness, host awareness events, organize a fundraiser, provide job training and skill building opportunities to connect victims to legal services. Social workers who want to work with youth victims of sex trafficking must prepare adequately. Services will be more effective if social workers take time to know what to do before they encounter victims. Getting involved in multidisciplinary and anti-trafficking teams and task force that unite social workers with law enforcement and healthcare is very important. Social workers should learn about their mandated reporting in their respective states and be aware that they may be required to call the police and report. The most important thing for social workers to remember is to remain non-judgmental and to not impose their own beliefs and values on sex trafficking of a child. It is important to utilize the social work core values and core competencies to effectively work on the social problem of human trafficking. The core values embraced by social workers include service, social justice, dignity and worth of the person, importance of human relationship integrity, and competence. Social work competencies that are utilized in working with human trafficking would be core competency 1, advocate for child access to service. Competency 5, advocate for human rights and social and economic justice. Engage in practice that advance social and economic justice. Competency 7, critique and apply knowledge to understand person and environment.
Competency 9, continuously recognize, assess, and attend to the social, cultural, economical, and technological changes that impact services. And Competency 10, engage, assess, intervene, and evaluate the individual, family, groups, organizations, and communities. Thank you. This has been Eagle Talk.